Before we start today's video, quick reminder to go ahead and click that subscribe button would be a big favor to yours truly. Now, the NFL came out with a bunch of rule changes, and there are some big implications for this. Obviously, it impacts all 32 teams, but I think it impacts some teams more than others. And I think the Falcons are one of those teams that are at risk of a greater impact. So I want to break that down on today's episode. Now, at the owners' meeting, Kirk Cousins also came up when Raheem Morris spoke to the media. We did a whole video about this earlier today, so I'm not going to rehash it again on this episode. But if you want the update on this, watch this video from the channel. But let's start with some of the rule changes that came out. Now, of course, all 32 teams have to play under these rules, but as I said, I think some teams are impacted more so than others because the Falcons are probably borderline livid. This rule got approved, and it's the Steelers' proposal saying, hey, you know that 2-day window of legal tampering before the new league year actually begins, but on Monday when all the contracts really start getting going and all the fireworks start getting set off? Well, how about we let teams talk to players in that 2-day window and not just speak with agents, which it has been previously done. So, as Pelissero points out, previously, you could only have contact with agents, not with players. Now the rule is in that Monday to Tuesday of the first week of NFL free agency, the legal tampering window, teams can also talk to up to 5 players as well. Does this sound familiar to anyone? Because it should. This is exactly what happened to the Falcons last year when they had illegal contact with Kirk Cousins, Darnell Mooney, and Charlie Werner, and lost a 5th-round draft pick out of it. Fast forward to 12 months later, and it's all fair game. You can talk to anyone you'd like, 5 players, during that legal tampering window. This is unbelievable. How is it that it's such a crime last year that you get fined and you get your draft picks taken away from you, your basic human rights stripped from you, and a year later, hey, water under the bridge, no biggie, pick up the phone, hang out with whoever you like, give the Falcons their draft pick back. This is bullshit. 1 year later, and we are allowed to do this now. But this is this is basically the NFL version of college football, where if a school got the book thrown at them for NIL stuff just 1 year too early, shame on you. Coach gets fired for putting cash in a McDonald's bag in 2020. You know who that is. But fast forward a few years later, and no biggie. You don't need to hide it in a McDonald's bag. Just put it in a nice, envelope and just hand it right to the player. There should be some type of, hey, you might have overreacted last year with that whole 5th-round draft pick being taken away from you. Now, we're probably not going to return the fines that you paid, but given that the new rule has been passed and the draft has not happened yet, we are going to go back and undo that part of the punishment. I don't expect that to happen, but it'd be nice. Give the pick back. Do the basic human thing, Roger. Come on. So that was one of the many rule changes that got approved. The next one I want to talk about is the touchbacks. So as we all learned last year with the new kickoff placement, that if the ball goes into the end zone and it is kneeled down or just taken back for it, or goes at the back of the end zone for a touchback, the ball will be placed at the 30-yard line. Now the ball will go out to the 35-yard line. And once again, you might look at this and think, well, if it applies to everyone, why does it impact one team more than another team? Well, I'll tell you why. Because some teams had different strategies for kickoffs last year. And while all special teams coordinators are probably happy with the increase in what's going to be more kick returns, because this new rule incentivizes teams to kick it into the landing zone, the 20 to the 0, which will then spark more returns. And that's something the Falcons have not really had much of a cutting edge at here. But you can look at the data from the last 2 years, the 11% increase in kick returns from 2023 to 2024, and 59 times there were 40-plus yard returns. However, what I want to share with you guys is with teams likely not aiming for the end zone for a simple touchback because they don't want the ball to go all the way out to the 35, they may have to do their approach. So here are the 16 NFC teams. And what you're looking at is a heat map. And we can go both full screen for you right now. Top left, you have the Commanders. The Commanders were the number one team in the NFC at kicking the ball short of the end zone. Last in the NFC was the Arizona Cardinals. And you can see virtually all of their kicks went into the end zone because they just simply didn't care, right? They said, take it from the 30. We're not going to try and nickel and dime you and see, well, maybe they return only to the 29 and we get an extra yard out of it. The Falcons are kind of right in the middle, where they're now one of the most egregious offenders of kicking it into the end zone, like the Cardinals, the Rams, and the Vikings were, which, by the way, all those are indoor teams, along with the Lions. But they are definitely not one of the huge, big beneficiaries from this, like the Commanders, the Saints, or the Panthers, who actively look to avoid kicking into the end zone and to bring on a return. So the Falcons coaching staff, they're going to have to redo their approach because they lean more towards the kick it out the back of the end zone, giving the ball at the 30. Now that it goes out to the 35, you may want to rethink that approach. On to the third rule change. Both teams possess the ball in overtime. I don't think this has much of an impact on the Falcons more than any other team. I did try and look up, this is going to sound funny, I did try and look up Atlanta's success at coin flips because that's what this comes down to. If you won the coin flip a lot, you probably don't like this new rule because prior to the new rule, you always, or most of the time, got the ball in overtime and had the chance to end the game right there. Now, if you're really good at picking heads or tails, doesn't matter since the other team's going to get a chance anyway. I did not have a lot of success. You can find what they picked, heads or tails, but I couldn't find a simple percentage over the last 2 or 3 years, and it was not worth the time to go game by game over the last 34 outings for the Falcons. But let me know, unpopular opinion, I like heads. I like heads. Everyone says tails because it's a cool, trendy thing, and it rhymes. Tails never fails. I'm a heads guy. Rule change number 4. Replay assist will now be permitted. This is a very noteworthy one that I want to explain because I feel like there's been some level of misunderstanding for what this means. So let me read to you almost verbatim what the rule says. The officials are permitted to reverse flags for hits to defensive players. That's 1 rule. Face masks, 2 rule. Horse collar, 3. Tripping, 4. Running into / roughing the kicker, 5. So these are the only 5, and the only 5 that replay assist can call down and go, hey, that wasn't a face mask. Here are 2 misconceptions. 1, roughing the passer. That is not a part of this. So unfortunately, there will be no call down from the box and go, hey, you missed roughing the passer, or more often, that wasn't roughing the passer. That is excluded from this. That will not change. Okay? 2, replay cannot call down and say you missed a face mask, throw a penalty. They can only chime in if a flag was thrown. So remember that Thursday night game between the Vikings and the Rams where the Rams defensive tackle, defensive end, Byron Young, I believe it was, got away with a face mask penalty on Sam Darnold and the game ended and everyone was furious? With this new replay assist, that wouldn't change because no flag was initially thrown. Now, what it could, no, never mind. I was about to bring up the Kyle Pitts Chiefs moment, but again, no flag was thrown, and also, I don't think that would have applied to any of these rules right here. So, if you're wondering, oh, is there's just like a referee god who can come in and save the day? You can only save the day if it's one of those 5 rules and a flag was thrown. 5th and final rule change. Hawkeye technology implemented for ball spotting. RIP to the 60-year-olds who were going out there every single Sunday, part of the chain gang. I like to think that pre and post game, they're ripping cigs, they're having a couple of beers. That time is over. The chain gang will still be out there, but they're backups. I don't really know what their purpose will be after a year or two if Hawkeye technology goes well and they may become dinosaurs and become extinct soon. But Hawkeye technology, will be used as the primary method for measuring ball placement during 2025. This is the same technology you see during tennis games, by the way, which is, I feel like, the only time I ever remember. I don't watch tennis, and when I do watch tennis, I'm just waiting for the really cool picture of like the shadow on top of the line, and it's like in, because it kind of feels like Wii Sports. So that's what we got going on, and I don't think this impacts one team more than the other. The Chiefs are probably upset by this because I always felt like they were on the good end of a bad chain gang performance. The Bills got to be ecstatic, but the Chiefs are probably like, hey, whatever was going on before, it was working pretty well for us, so let's not rock the boat. This rocks the boat. Before we move on to the second half of today's episode, quick reminder to subscribe leading up to the NFL draft. We're going to have live draft coverage for pick number 15, day 1 of the draft, day 2, and then we'll see how the first 2 days go and if I can get the studio space for day 3. But we'll do deep dive analysis of every single pick, completely free, of course. We don't have commercial breaks. Like, we're not going to go away for a Taco Bell commercial when someone's getting selected. So make sure to subscribe leading up to the NFL draft. So 2 other topics I want to cover here: draft strategy and some cornerback chatter. Let's talk draft strategy first and foremost, because Arthur Blank spoke to the media, and when speaking to the media, he talked about what the Falcons could be sizing up to do in this year's draft, and he did not really mess around much. He just said, hey, we're going to make an emphasis on the defensive side of the ball. As long as Atlanta only has 5 picks, and 2 of those are worthless in my eyes, they're 7th rounders, with only 3 quality picks, I expect all 3 of those picks to be on defense. The only way I think this could change a little bit is if they were to trade back from 15 and acquire more picks. If they find out or they fall into a first, a second, a third, a fourth, and a fifth from a couple of trade backs, well, then when they have 5, 6, 7 picks, they may not go pure defense. But as things currently stand, I expect all 3 of these to be defensive players, and who gives a shit about these picks right here? So that's kind of the update on the draft side of things. One other thing on the draft side of things. Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot both went to watch Kelvin Banks, who is the Texas left tackle, work out. I don't think they're going to go offensive tackle at 15, although they do love going offense in round 1 as a franchise. Really feel like this year they're not going to pull that one on us. I could only see them going for Banks if they trade back from 15. If they go from 15 to 25 and they add an extra second rounder, and then at 25, Banks is there and they're thinking, hey, this is our right tackle for the future. McGary's entering a contract year. Let's draft Banks. Let's let him sit and develop for a year because he does need some development. I'm not super high on him as a first-round prospect. And then in 2026, McGary leaves in free agency. We don't have to pay him, and we turn it over to Banks. That's the only path I see for Atlanta selecting him. Third and final segment is some cornerback chatter. There was someone on our recent video that asked me to do a little bit of a deep dive on what Atlanta's plan is with Clark Phillips at the nickel position. So whoever you are, you know who you are. Let's talk Clark Phillips, because he came up at the owners' meeting, and Raheem Morris expressed a decent amount of confidence that they are going to toss out Phillips at that nickel position, and they're going to give him a shot, right? They're going to see how it goes. That's not quite verbatim, but more or less the gist of what Morris had to say about Atlanta's current cornerback setup. He said that they are comfortable with putting Mike Hughes inside or outside, but they're first going to roll with Terrell, Hughes on the outside, and Phillips at the nickel. So let's talk about how, I wouldn't say realistic this is because it's going to happen, but how good of an idea this is, I guess. So if I look back at Clark Phillips' career with the Falcons and at Utah, I want you guys to look at the left side of the screen, the top side of the screen. Yeah, top side of the screen is him in Atlanta. I got confused by my own graphic. And the bottom is him at Utah. So inside for the Falcons through 2 seasons, he has played 36 snaps. Inside for the Utah Utes, he played 424 snaps. Outside for the Falcons, 673. Outside for Utah, 1,300. So he has predominantly been an outside corner. I'm not here to say he can't move to the inside. He's a professional football player. You should have some wiggle room with these players. especially someone that's just trying to find a spot on the roster and a spot on the starting lineup. So I won't shoot down the idea of Phillips can't play inside. He hasn't done it a lot. First time for everything. There are plenty of examples of players moving around in the NFL, tackles and guards going from the left side to the right side. Avery Williams was drafted to play defensive back and then moved over to running back. So guys do move positions. It's not very uncommon. And this is not even a positional change. It's just a little bit of a different ecosystem. Going from an outside corner where you're like, hey, let's box, man-to-man, press coverage, I'm going to get up in your face, versus playing on the inside where now you are a part of the front five, right? Where you are a part of the pass rush at times. You're going to be a blitz package calling your name every so often, and you're going to have to work with running backs and tight ends and slot receivers. You just got to be more versatile. And so you may not be going up against a team's number one receiver, which is traditionally their outside X receiver like Drake London. But that does not mean you are off the hook for some of the tough duties. I think the value of a nickel corner is skyrocketing because teams are using more 3 wide receiver sets. Slot receivers are having a larger role today than ever before. And if you do not have an adequate slot nickel corner, then you are probably going to be in for a long day. And we learned that last year with D. Alford down the stretch, which is why I could see Atlanta targeting corner like Jahdae Barron out of Texas in round 2. If he falls that far, doesn't seem super likely, but it is the draft. You never quite know with these things. So hope you enjoyed a little Clark Phillips nickel breakdown. There's just not a lot of true tape and film from him in the NFL on the inside for me to come up with a really strong opinion as to whether or not it's going to be successful. At the end of the day, it's his job to play, and it's the coach's job to get him in a position to be successful. And they've got all summer to get this done. If you made it to the end of the video, by the way, comment an emoji down below, and let's spin our wheel to see who's going to be our lucky commenter of the day. All I do is I just pick 6 commenters from our previous video just to get you guys on screen and a part of the channel a little bit more. And it looks like Mark Jones, commenter of the day. 2 claps for Mark, everyone. 1, 2. Mark, thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to sign off and see everyone later.